The United States Department of Agriculture and Health Human Services allows that a 2-year-old child may get 10% of their calories from additional sugars.
Our next guest is actually the two Bertonatti brothers. Miguel and Carlos are both athletes, sometimes extreme athletes, and the founders of the Medical Health Institute, where they specialize in evidence-based hormone optimization, personalized peptide protocols, and functional medicine strategies to maximize vitality, performance, and longevity.
He was getting lab testing, and doctors are like, oh, you're fine. It's all in your head. Maybe it's a pinched nerve. And he went through everything. This is why people should take their health under their care and prioritize it, because you don't know that there's an enemy out there that's affecting you every single day in more ways that you can imagine from every angle.
Hi, my name is Chris Burris. I'm a longevity expert and the chief scientist at a lab focused on a longevity molecule. My primary focus is to help people live longer and better lives with science. Make sure to subscribe and share so you and your friends can live longer and better. Well, actually, so you and your friends can live beyond the norms.
Hi, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Beyond the Norms Health and Longevity podcast. Our next guest is actually the two Bertonatti brothers. Miguel and Carlos are both athletes, sometimes extreme athletes, and the founders of the Medical Health Institute, where they specialize in evidence-based hormone optimization, personalized peptide protocols, and functional medicine strategies to maximize vitality, performance, and longevity. I met them after their talk at the Biohacking Expo in Miami, and then I got a chance to reconnect with them at the Ben Azadi Metabolic Freedom book launch. So I'm really excited to sit down and have this conversation. From their website, their goal is to redesign your health with medical science using cutting-edge strategies to help you look, feel, and perform your best. Carlos, Miguel, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome,
Chris,
man.
thank you.
Pleasure being on.
And I mentioned this earlier, so for the audience, I'm going to turn these questions over to you, and if I need to step in, I will. But the first thing, before we get into your area of expertise, I want to go further back. I want to go much further back. What was it like growing up, little Carlos and little Miguel? Where did you grow up? What were your parents like? And if there was some event or someone you could pinpoint as the ultimate reason you would become a biohacker, a podcaster, health practice founder, what or who would that be?
For me, it was pretty simple. I was the fat, chunky friend of all of them. And they made fun of me so much that at 15 and a half, actually, I started going to the gym. And I still remember I was trying to do bicep curl with a hamstring, the ham curl hamstrings for your legs. So I literally just went to the gym and started pushing whatever I could possibly do. And that's how my journey started. And Carlos can speak for himself.
I think, just for context, in relation to your question, we were born in Venezuela to a Venezuelan mother and an Argentinian father. And, I'm grateful for our childhood. And I think that the cool thing that my father gave us is he had this, he built a home in Argentina and he loved going there every year. So in Argentina, it's winter time during summer vacation, right? So because of the times, right? So we would go, for winter sports since we were kids, right? So my dad had this thing about teaching us how to ski since we were very, very young. And I think that woke up sort of the competitive spirit in us, and obviously sports. Till today, Miguel and I, for my birthday, which is in February, we schedule 3 weeks of, winter sports extravaganza. And we go for 3-4 weeks, chasing storms and jumping off helicopters with super extreme sports, and it's something that we really love. And so I think that from childhood, that sparked us, Miguel got into wakeboarding and surfing, and so did I. And it was, we were always really into, I guess what you would call it, extreme sports, and always pushing the envelope, right? So I think that that's what ignited, at least for me, and I think that I'll speak for Miguel as well, that ignited this desire to kind of have an edge, right? And how to get our bodies to perform these very extreme feats that we were trying to accomplish. And, as age came, the inability to do that based on many different factors, and a bunch of other circumstances, I think woke up Miguel to, we started working in hormones, and Miguel has a personal story that kind of ignited was kind of like the seed that started the company. And I'll let him explain that. But yeah, it was childhood sports, age and always wanting to perform at our best that kind of sparked this journey that now is what MHI is today.
So born in Venezuela, then and I think you moved out of Venezuela pretty young, right?
Yeah.
And then frequently going down to Argentina. Was one of you involved in the Argentinian ski team at some point?
I competed for the ski team. Miguel was at a very young age when it was unheard of in South America to be sponsored by Burton, which was a really big brand, making snowboards, because he was actually the youngest kid at that time on the mountain riding snowboard. So
I was actually the first youngest kid to ride snowboard in Bariloche.
Yeah.
That's pretty. So you guys,
was it reef or was it burn? I'm sorry, Miguel. I don't remember. I think it was reef.
Reef.
Yeah. Right. So from an early age, kind of competing at a pretty high. So I still have a hard time picturing the young, chunky Miguel, because you just talked about right, like that was that like one day you woke up and you felt like some of us do. Oh, I feel heavy today, and you called that your chunky phase?
No, I had two best friends that were super fit. They had six packs, and I had a big belly. I wasn't like fat, but I was definitely chubby. So they always picked on me. And one time we had a boat, and I jumped off of it, and I couldn't get back up. And they just kept making fun of me, and I was freaking out because, it's salt water. So I thought there were sharks around, and I was really scared. And once they brought me onto the boat, next day I was in the gym. That's how it started.
Yeah, maybe doing it wrong the first day, but you got that sorted out. That's pretty awesome.
I definitely sorted that one out.
and I think
it's funny. Carlos, I have a similar experience to Miguel.
Please.
Like sophomore year, I gained a bunch of weight, and you could see the progression in the pictures. I was always slim, and then I gained a lot of weight sophomore year, to the point that they started making fat jokes about me. And I was like, never again. So I went to Argentina, because we were doing the whole winter sports thing. And I had purchased a bottle of Ripped Fuel. And I went on this, it was intuitive. Nobody had taught me this. I was just like, okay, bread cannot be good for you. So I went on this super low carb diet, kind of like what we call keto diet today. And I lost over 20 pounds during the summer and came back with a six pack. And all my friends were like, and so that to me, that was that's when I guess was the first seed of biohacking, as you would call it.
Yeah. Starting to control your physicality. I think, Carlos, I also found an album that you released in 2024. It is pretty good. We've been listening to it here at the office. So
wow.
Any plans to come out with something else?
Running a company with thousands of patients is pretty wild. So, there's so much bandwidth that you have. So maybe when we get to the next sort of benchmark in the company, maybe I could take some time to dedicate myself to my passions, but we'll see.
Yeah. Do you still play on weekends or something, or you're really that busy?
Listen, I'll always be a musician. It's just so every night I have multiple guitars here at my house, and sometimes I'll do it for just brain exercises, to kind of like brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand. So it's funny that you bring it up, because I was talking to a friend. I'm like, man, I want to hire a guy to come and I could just jam out with. So I've been downloading some programs. So when I have some free time on the weekends, I kind of jam out, but yeah.
By the way, I love that concept of hiring somebody to come, right? Like personal trainers, coaches, health coaches, all of that stuff, because in a lot of cases what to do, right? You know how to play the guitar, but it's that paying somebody to force you to do it, and also to kind of challenge you. I really big believer in all
no
of that.
question. I think that applies for everything, specifically in what we do in this podcast and health is immersion is important, right? And sometimes having most of us know what to do. We know that we need to eat right, we need to exercise, but some of us just can't get ourselves to do it. So having sort of like an accountability partner or someone that pushes you to the other edge, or having someone to call about, hey, I'm having difficulty putting this together, can you help me out? Sort of someone to bounce ideas off of it is really helpful, right? Even, I mean, that's what we do with our coaches. When you come to our clinic and you participate in any of the programs that we have, I tell people all the time that the biggest value that we offer is the coaching that comes along with it that you do not pay for, right? Because everybody at our company are people that eat, live, and breathe this lifestyle. And I'm not talking about hormones and peptides, which we're happy to talk about. And Miguel will geek out till the end of times with it. And he's amazing at it. But it's also like having someone there that you can call, right? I teach my coaches all the time, like, hey, you might be the only person in that patient's life that they have that they can relate to the journey that they want to have, right? Because most people will have someone in their life that is a naysayer or a fear-mongering person, or say, oh, why do that? Let's just have a couple beers, so we might be the only friend that they have that shares this desire to, reach optimum health, right? So yes, 100%. Getting the right person on your corner, right, and having a coach in the area that you want to master, I think, is a super important asset to have.
Absolutely. So I've listened to a couple interviews, including the one you guys did with Ty Lopez. A lot of people may not know who he is. He's got 2.5 million followers. I didn't find your guys' credentials, but in these interviews, it's clear you guys know what you're talking about. Where does that come from? And I think Miguel, I think that you have a story, and maybe that's the genesis of it. And how did you guys do in school? Because you guys are clearly bright as I'm watching these interviews. And what do you lean on? There's a whole bunch of questions, but what do you lean on to kind of further develop your knowledge?
Well, I would say first
Miguel,
of
let's
all,
start with your story.
Yeah, I would say first of all, like, this is how the company got started. Aside from being chunky, then it was being sick all the time. Every time I would go to the cold, now I knew I had an autoimmune response, and it was definitely gut related, where I would go to the cold and my hands would get so dry that I would get cuts, and I would have to put gloves, and it was like I couldn't grab anything. I would have like tick bites all over my body, and it was awful. Going to the cold was always awful for me. And then it was always, I had the fever, the flu. I was constantly sick. They called me enfermatis in Spanish in my country, which means sick boy. I was always with the flu or something. And then one day when I got to the United States, I was sick of feeling sick. And that's how my whole journey started, where I just started, going online and educating myself with whatever was available at the time, which most of it is garbage. So it took years and years of crashing and burning, figuring out what is good, what is bad, right? And the education purely came from online education. Online education, going to conferences, doing online workshops, speaking to different doctors in the industry, right? When you're at a conference, you know how it is, the networking, and when you meet people and then you discuss the class, etc. And I literally built years of information. Then I ended up working for a medical practice, right? It got to the point that the medical doctor was asking me for advice. And at that point, I knew I was in the wrong place. So then, sure enough, I moved to another clinic, and sort of the same thing happened until 2015. Medical Health Institute came to life, right? And it also started about, aside from feeling sick and tired all the time, I also suffered from erectile dysfunction at a very early age. And it was a quest on figuring out what it was, right? And everything was pointing to testosterone therapy. Sure enough, after 8 years of going on this journey, I decided to give testosterone a chance. Mind you, I had done clomiphene, HCG. I had done testicular stimulus prior to that with very little positive results. And then the moment I got on testosterone, a microdose of daily Cialis, it was like I was back on. Like, I had never felt any better. And there was my day, literally, I was reborn that day, right? And we always like to tell patients, is your life before therapy and after therapy. There is a ginormous change. Not only was I able to solve my ED issue, but cognitive issues, motivation. Overall, my performance, obviously exercising was better. And I fell in love with the industry. And that's how the whole thing started. But I do want to mention one thing, because a lot of people are like, oh, credentials. Yeah, I understand that credentials are important, right? If you're a surgeon, you definitely need to go to medical school, because I would not want you to do surgery on me if you haven't done medical school, right? But the problem is, when it comes to our industry, which is optimization, I'm sure you know, Chris, unfortunately, education has to be something you proactively do. Medical school is not going to teach you about optimization. They teach you about symptom resolution, a pill for an ill approach, which is the problem that I ran into when I had DED. There was no help for me. It was pretty much a wild, wild west, right? So one thing led to the other, and then I realized that the medical industry is set up to teach you how to look at symptoms and manage them, right? It's a sick health. It's not a healthy system like healthcare system. It's really a sick machine system that is just trying to manage disease. That's at least my interpretation of it. And then the other thing that I realized, if you look at every medical study, you can never replicate the same exact medical study. The way they say they have done them closely is by patterns, but you can never replicate the same study based on environment, age, and so many other factors that go into it. So we're basically working with incomplete information, and all of medicine is just our best guess, right? That's, again, my interpretation. And that's why it's called a medical practice, because we continue to practice medicine. So, as I became more savvy on what to look for, then I started realizing, you want to be looking at journals from like the New England Journal of Medicine or the Journal of American Medical Association, right? Nature. And then when it comes to like studies, right? You have free database like PubMed Central. Then you have the National Institute of Health, then the NCBI, right? There's so many different ones. But the point is, the more I dug, the more I realized, wow, the information is right in front of you. You just have to learn how to dig it. And then when I had, intellectual conversations with doctors within the field, it was a back and forth conversation, right? Meaning they understood me, I understood them, and sometimes they didn't even know how to respond to my questions. And that's how, sure enough, we opened the Medical Health Institute, and now we have 5 different medical providers that do their job amazingly, and we just oversee the operation and make sure that the philosophy and ethos of the company continues to move forward, meaning progressing with medicine, because as we know, everything most doctors learn, which I'll close out with that, most of the things that doctors learned within 5 years is irrelevant or obsolete. Half of that information is irrelevant and obsolete. And now that we have AI, it's exponentially accelerating that, right? So all we can do is, with our entrepreneurship skills, is add on to our practice as many tools as we can to maximize our patients' outcomes, right? By providing awesome customer care service. And that's how we've been extremely successful. That's how we have over 550 plus 5-star reviews, and we continue to grow. And we're very happy and motivated by what we do, because we're changing lives every single day.
Carlos, anything to add to that?
I would only, if you allow me to just add, is, kind of like death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's also kind of like putting ourselves, Miguel and I separately together, putting ourselves through the test. I mean, I always tell all our patients, like, the greatest guinea pigs of the company are him and I. Like, we test everything on ourselves first. And it was, going, like you said, going out to conferences, digging, and not taking no for an answer, right? Like, we always wanted to perform at our best. I think that one of people's biggest fears is not reaching their maximum potential. I know that was one of my fears, is like, I want to reach my maximum potential. And so we took that ethos into health, and like, how do I get my body to be at its peak prime potential all the time? Like, what are the ingredients that make the body churn? And so, when Miguel refers to, and he was being modest about his experience, like, here's a kid, 18 years old, suffering from erectile dysfunction suddenly and aggressively, right? Where you're supposed to be at the peak of your prime. Your friends are talking about all these sexual experiences, and, you're just becoming a man and discovering yourself and getting into relationships and all this stuff. By the way, at the time, I mean, this kid had like 8% body fat, ripped to shreds. I mean, amazing physical body, amazing skill set on, whether it was a wave or a snowboard. And here he is dealing with erectile dysfunction, not being able to perform And one of the things that kind of will hit your virility, and really affect your psychology very, very profoundly, right? When you can't do this. And, he was getting lab testing, and doctors are like, oh, you're fine. It's all in your head. Maybe it's a pinched nerve. And he went through everything, chiropractic, the coaching. I don't know, even plant medicine, and nothing worked, right? Until he learned how to read labs, and he said, okay, these labs actually cut off 2.5% of the top healthiest people in our nation. I don't even know what those results are. So why am I basing myself of someone who's unhealthy? And, so like I said, death by 1,000 cuts, and just continuing to progress and push the envelope, not get no for an answer, and not shoving symptoms underneath a rug, right? Like really addressing them. And so we never quit on our patients. If you come to us with a symptom, you come to us with problems, we're going to dig and turn every stone that we can turn until we solve the problem.
Right. So I would add one little thing to that, what he's saying. So for me was the ED. It started at 18. At 22, I diagnosed myself with, severe ED. And from there, once I solved it, it might be mental fog for you. It might be aches and pains, depression, insomnia, weight around your midsection, high cholesterol levels, MTHFR, right? Like there's methylation and detoxification issues. So we literally tackle medicine from every angle, right? Because hormones are just one tool of the tool belt. Vitamins, key nutrients are one tool of the tool belt. Carbon C60, one tool of the tool belt, right? Blue photobiomodulation, cold plunging, tracking your sleep and getting these are all tools. So how do you grab an everyday Joe who never got educated in school? Because if you look at the United States dietary guideline, it's embarrassing, right? To say the least. So people who are trying in good faith to follow what our government is telling them, they're finding themselves pre-diabetic and with metabolic issues. And that's when they end up coming to us, and we teach them a lifestyle. I would say, and this is something we've been saying for a while now, there are many medical practices out there, but I would say that we are what you would call a modern biohacking medical practice. And biohacking is just where science meets self-mastery. Right? The science of light, the science of cold plunging, the science of sleep, the science of grounding, the science of hormones, etc. The list is endless. So how do you encapsulate it all in a way that this won't be just physically transformative, but it will completely renew your way of seeing life, right?
Yeah.
Because you come here because you're a little overweight, and all of a sudden you don't realize you had mental fog, you couldn't properly sleep, your back was hurting, now that pain is gone. All these little subtle differences that people notice as they go through the journey with us. And to have a team that literally handholds our patients the entire way is something that we really pride ourselves in, because we're really living it, as you've met us before, right? And backstage, behind the scenes. We
probably overwhelmed you 1,000 times.
Maybe. I wouldn't admit to that because I'm sharp. So just a couple of things there. One of them, it's potential, Miguel, that you're lucky that it was ED, right? Because if it was just aches and pains, if it was just little challenges, maybe you never would have had to dig in and really understand these things. So I mean, you wouldn't want to wish that on anyone, but when you're on the other side of it, man, there's so much strength can come out of that.
Yeah, it's awful. And I always tell people, because, once I fixed it physically, I needed to fix it psychologically. And I say this because there's over 25 million men suffering, and those are the reported ones. I would say there's even more. And that's why, as Carlos said, I was in really good shape. Shape means nothing to us. Like, you can be in phenomenal shape and you have severe ED, because that's what I experienced, right? So what the problem is, when it gets into your psychology, now you can even sabotage your marriage. Because I would say, from my personal experience, right, I had two beautiful, wonderful women before my wife who were wonderful ladies, but I sabotaged the relationship because I was hiding from myself and I couldn't get the courage to tell them that I had this issue. So of course, first impression is pretty good, right? I had a pill. But then once you're dating with somebody, how do you pre-plan sex all the time without letting them know that you have this issue? And not to mention the burden and weight that has inside your soul and your spirit, like to be hiding this thing that you don't know how to communicate. So I sabotaged two relationships and lost them because I didn't want to communicate that I had to take a pill to have sex. So every time I thought of sex, I thought, am I going to get a hard-on? Right? That is not the way to, quote unquote, go into the the magic of
Yeah.
sex or
Intimacy.
making
Intimacy.
love, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and I think you touched on this just a little bit, Miguel, which is the traditional medical community is working on the bulk, on the numbers, and what you guys are doing is working on this N of 1.
Yeah.
I want to shift a little bit here. I think
just to make that point very clear, because Carlos said something I don't think people and the listeners would understand what he meant by the 2.5%. Most people don't know when they're looking at their lab reference range, there's a low and high, right? And what you're looking at is 2 standard deviation, which is 95% of the population. The other 5% is a 2.5 bottom bracket and 2.5 upper bracket, which is like the LeBron James, right? I want to be compared to that 2.5, which is not even on blood work, right? And the reason why I say that is because let's take a look a little bit at the state of America, right? 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. 90% of our US dollars are spent on managing chronic diseases, and only 3% of that is on preventive medicine. That's not including longevity or optimization. So 50% are either pre-diabetic, insulin resistance, or diabetic, right? Then you have the other 50% of people with poor VO2 max. And if you know anything about health hazard ratio risk, having a poor VO2 max increases your risk of death and cardiovascular events by 4 times.
Yeah.
Right? And then 33% of Americans are dropping dead from cardiovascular disease, developing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and developing metabolic syndrome, which is the gateway to most chronic major diseases.
Yeah.
Right? The list goes on. 60% have at least one chronic disease. 40% have 2 or more chronic diseases. And this is the scariest part. The United States Department of Agriculture and Health Human Services allows that a 2-year-old child may get 10% of their calories from additional sugars. That means I have a 2-year-old toddler. Hey, here's a Coca-Cola or a soda or a Snickers bar, right? That's allowed in America. So when you talk to me about a 2 standard deviation, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. And I think just to kind of snip that in the bud and we can move on, because I know you have an agenda, Chris, it's really important for people, because look, anybody that's listening to your podcast, I assume. And so when people call us, I am assuming that you want to be part of that 2.5% top percentile in terms of your health. If not, why are we having a conversation? If you want to be normal, like what our government considers normal, and, Miguel just gave the statistics of what normal is today, then, don't do anything about it. You're fine. You don't have to do anything. But if you want to feel alive, vibrant, powerful, have total mental clarity, and just full presence in all the areas that matter to you today, unfortunately, what most people don't understand is that they have an enemy, and we'll talk about these enemies, right? That most people don't even know that they exist, but they definitely didn't sign up for. Like, we didn't sign up for all the stuff that's in our food, right? And so when you're talking about being part of that 2.5 percentile and you want amazing health, this is the only vessel that we've been given, and we have to feed it and nourish it and make sure that it stays clean and healthy so it can carry us and give us the experience of being alive. Well, if you want to be part of that 2.5%, then you have to go outside of the tradition, because the tradition is just telling you how to be normal. The tradition is telling you how to just not be an F student. A D plus and C is okay, right? Is perfectly fine. So if you want to be an A student or a B plus student, you have to go above those reference ranges, because they just don't tell you the truth.
And I just want to, because you're talking about this 2.5%, and there's going to be a lot of people listening to this who that's not actually their goal, right? You guys work also with people who just want to move up that ladder, right? So maybe your goal isn't the 2.5%, right? Because I don't want to put the effort in that LeBron James had to put in. Right?
Listen, I have a patient that says, hey, he came from a really well-to-do, very famous person in our industry who his style was like, if you're not an A plus student, I don't want to talk to you. Right?
Yeah, you don't exist. Yeah.
And it's overwhelming. So he was like, Carlos, please tell me, can I be a B plus student with you guys? I'm like, absolutely, man.
All right, cool. Good. I just wanted to make sure the audience is aware. Like to sign up with you guys, you don't have your goal isn't LeBron James necessarily.
Yes.
But if that is your goal,
in other words, we like the six pack, right? But
Yep.
six pack doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy, right?
Correct.
For us, it's just kind of like our resume. The proof is in the pudding, baby.
Yeah.
To have and be in the shape that we are, you have to be consistently putting work into it, right? So this is part of our resume. You ask, where's my credentials? My body and my mind are my credentials, right? And our results with our medical practice. So it's not only about looking good, but it's really like, if you look at our mission statement, it's about helping you look, feel, and perform your best by enhancing the quality of your life now and into the future by providing you full spectrum biooptimization, whatever that means to you. Right?
Yeah. And listen, and by the way, look, I think that the biggest advantage, right? It's having people on your corner, like I said, people in your corner that have gone through all the steps. We've been where you are, right? We started at the bottom since we were teenagers. Death by 1,000 cuts, trying, failing. Oh my God, high protein diets, low protein diets, Mediterranean diets, all this
Keto,
stuff.
carnivore, which way to go?
We've done it all and have over 45,000 labs of data points and people from all walks of life, colors, religions, backgrounds. And it's become sort of like a scientific process at this point. It's, taking away from the body the things that are becoming an obstacle and adding to the body the things that are missing. The body does magic. Now, what that means for the individual, we have guys, like I said, want to be A+ students. They don't mind doing 10,000 things, right? And it's like, okay, cool. I caution you. Don't become overwhelmed. Let's go one step at a time. But usually, like if you're someone that is a traveling person, a soccer mom, and you don't have the bandwidth to be an A+ student, we adjust it to your style and in the hopes that will grow, because the better you feel, the more that you're willing to take on. But we have to meet people where they are. So whoever you are, if you're listening, it doesn't matter where you start in the journey. The important thing is to start. Right. And we know where you're going to be at that point, and we know how much to load you with depending on your personality, your style, your lifestyle circumstances, your budget. That's important. Right. And so we need to meet you what you are. And that's what I think we're really, really good at.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the N of one, like addressing each person as an individual, including their goals. So one thing that I think I read or heard in an interview is I think both of you were diagnosed with ADHD and were on some medications, and that may have been some problems. My son has ADHD. What would you do different today than what was done for you back then?
Let me ask you something, Chris. Is there a blood test, a neurotransmitter test, or any form of test that you can give me that's reliable with science that can pinpoint your son actually has ADHD?
It was woefully disappointing how quickly he was diagnosed with ADHD. Now, I see all the hallmarks, right? Like I'm not. And one of my goals is he was on a medication pretty early. We have never increased his dosage, and he is at least 5 times heavier than he was originally. So effectively, we've cut his dose by 5 times by sticking to this. I believe he's going to grow out of it. And I would share a story, but I want to stay. So what would you guys do different with kind of if you were dealing with somebody who was diagnosed today?
I will tell you right off the bat that ADHD to me, again, from my professional opinion and having the highest level of what you would consider attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, okay? First of all, we were fed Adderall, which is an amphetamine, cocaine, morphine, everything that ends in N is highly addictive. And Adderall is basically oral cocaine. And we were prescribed the dose that the doctor should have lost his license, because I was drinking half a bottle of whiskey to go to bed, and I was waking up with a Red Bull, an Adderall, and a cigarette because I used to smoke at the time. That was my breakfast, and that was my dinner, right? And it was literally, if you've ever taken that drug, your body can be exhausted, but you can't turn off your mind because it's lit up, right? So the point is, after years of researching, I've been off. I'm 40 years old. I've been off since I was basically 15 years. I've been off of it. And I've had the opportunity to take it again, and I have no desire for it because I am now naturally 24/7 every single day on Adderall, naturally. And one of the things that I discovered that really what ADHD is, ADD, and a lot of these psychotic issues that people are labeled with really comes from SNP mutations that we carry. Gary Brecka is one of the big names that basically, tooted throughout the airways that having an issue in the in the methylation circuit, which is MTHFR, MTR, MTRR, AHCY, and COMT, then you're going to have a problem methylating, meaning converting raw material into a refined form that your body can accept to code for the genes that are dysfunctional. So when you got a double SNP, meaning that gene is like a light bulb that just doesn't work or it's dimmed out, less than 10% functionality. So if your genes cannot grab the cofactors that we're consuming to create the enzymatic reactions, there's going to be deficiencies. And when you have deficiencies in your catecholamine or serotonin pathway, right, or gamma aminobutyric pathway, then yeah, your child is going to experience ups and downs because of the deficiency that he doesn't have the tools in order to absorb or metabolize or process specific nutrients that are not methylated. So when you ask me, your son or any children on the United States has ADD, ADHD, whatever you want to call it, is usually a methylation issue or a genetic factor, right? And there's a company out there, which we'll shout out to her. I believe you know her, Kim, the founder of SNP Nutrigenomics, which we literally have every patient on that product because stop guessing. Stop guessing what your body needs. Let's identify what gene breaks you have, whether you have a single or double SNP on a specific gene marker, and actually give you the refined nutrients that your body needs to treat 103 of the master active genes that regulate energy, detoxification, methylation, your microbiome, every pathway of your body. There's 22,000 protein coding genes. She's looking at 103, right? But just with that product itself, you can literally get rid of, I believe, 95% of what your son, quote unquote, has called ADHD.
Yeah, I would only add, and I might open a can of worms here. I agree with everything that Miguel just said. Coincidentally, and interestingly enough, we're so quick as a culture to label a child, right? Because it makes it more comfortable for teachers to deal with their energy, which, by the way, is brilliant because then you get to old age and you complain about having no energy, right? So it's right? So it's just this like double standard. It's nonsense. Not to mention that most ADHD people that I've known are brilliant. Right. So in their own respect. Right. So I think it's no coincidence. Like you're talking to a guy who, as Miguel alluded to, this guy should have been put in prison. I mean, he gave a 17-year-old kid 60 milligrams of Adderall a day. 60 milligrams of Adderall a day for a 17-year-old. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes. I had so much anxiety. Right. And I was just robotic. So not to mention the fact that, as Miguel said, they're very addicting. So getting off of these medications, the withdrawal symptoms can be crippling. And that's why most people can't get off of them. Now, interestingly enough, Miguel more aggressive than I, but we both have double copy of MTHFR. Did we have genetics available at that time? Was there a guy that said, hey, maybe we should look at the methylation pathway first, right? And address those nutrient deficiencies. Nutrient deficiencies in our culture now become even more relevant, specifically around the issue of methylation, because we have a nutrient deficiency just as in general, right? So what I would do with your kid is, number one, look at his methylation pathway. Be absolutely religious about his nutrition supplementation. I mean, I tell people nowadays, oh, you tell me you eat clean. How many supplements do you take? None. You don't eat clean. You don't eat clean because you're not giving cellular food to your cells. You're just not. We're not getting it from the ground anymore, right? So I would definitely look into SNP. I've had multiple patients do this for their kids with ADHD, and they saw a lot of symptom resolution because, as Miguel addressed, why are you guessing? Let's give your genes and let's give your cells exactly what they need to perform the jobs that they were engineered by our creator to do. Right? Let's just give it what it needs. That's the problem. Our cells are not getting what they need. So that's one approach that I would take. The other approach that I would take is, like I said, most ADHD people that I've met are brilliant in their own respect. So maybe putting him in environments where he thrives and things that he loves to do, right? Like, let me tell you, when I'm skiing, there's no ADHD. It's full 100% presence in the moment. There's no past, there's no future. It's right now. And it takes everything that I am to make sure that I don't make a mistake flying down the mountain at 65 miles an hour so I don't get hurt, right? Now, going at 65 miles an hour is what makes me feel alive. And so I don't want to give up the 65 miles an hour. I just want full concentration. So there's no ADHD there. When I play music, there's no ADHD there, right? Miguel has ADHD. Yeah, sure. If you put him in a classroom listening to a bunch of boring shit that you don't want to listen to, sure, right? But maybe it's also putting him in environments where he thrives in, so he can get that self-confidence. Because if he's told that something is wrong with him because he's in an environment that doesn't really nourish or appreciate his gifts, then that stuff starts to become mental. So it's really about putting him in environments. That's why I have 2 godchildren that are homeschooled, and they are brilliant. I'm not suggesting that everybody should be homeschooled. I'm just saying, putting your child in environments where they're going to feel confident about their skill set, and everybody's different, and we have to discover what that is.
Well, I would add, Chris, real quick. First of all, AI is changing all of that. I mean, I think schools are becoming obsolete and they know it, because learning can be done 3-4 times faster today using AI like in a healthy manner, because AI can be used unhealthy, right? But if these devices are given to children and properly used, we can accelerate exponentially how to learn, right? Before, you would have to go to a library, find a book that was possibly outdated. Now you have everything at the fingertips of your hands. It's just ridiculous. So anyways, my point of telling you the mutation things, so you have an idea. My father, my brother, and I did Kim Messler's test. I believe that's her last name.
Wrestler, yeah.
Wrestler,
yes.
Yeah.
Kim Wrestler. So we did the test, and check this out. My dad, my brother, and I have identically the same double SNP mutations, except I have one more than both of them, which is the VDR-APA1, which means I don't have the gene that's supposed to code for specific enzymes to regenerate and thicken the mucus lining on my intestinal wall. I don't have that gene. So I've always had inflammatory gut issues. When you have inflammation, you don't have proper neurotransmitter production, which 5 of your most important neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, GABA, glutamate, serotonin, dopamine, regulate about 55 other ones and stabilize mood. So if you don't have a healthy gut, you don't have healthy neurotransmitter production. And on top of it, I have a COMT mutation, which doesn't allow me to break down properly neurotransmitters. So addiction, I've had an addictive personality because I don't properly produce dopamine, right? Now that I have those addictions or stimulations that used to have a big control over me, no longer have that control. So it's funny and it's just to give people perspective, right? My father, my brother, and I tested identically the same for the same SNPs, which they're handed down by mom and dad. But the one that I have different, I gained that one from my mom. My mom has a double copy of that one. Right. And the only difference between my brother and I is that I've had inflammation, gut issues almost my entire life. Couldn't figure out why. Now they're gone. Between FMT, fecal microbiota transfer, and using Kim's product, I mean, I'm completely free of inflammation in my gut. I feel better than I've ever felt in my life. So I would start
Chris,
there.
To give you the final, like, the beautiful thing about AI and genetics today at our disposal is that we can specifically target the things that are wrong to get someone back into function. So I would definitely exercise, genetic nutrition with your son.
Yeah. No,
and don't forget this, amphetamines is a $8 to $10 billion a year industry. There's a big interest to label your child with ADHD because it's a profit machine.
Yeah. 100%.
You know?
Hey, super quick break from the podcast. Hopefully you're loving it. This is a way you can support the podcast and take advantage of a great offer. We're offering 50% off of one of our MCT bottles. MCT is an amazing oil. Add the ESS60 molecule to it. It's even more amazing. All you got to do is leave a review on iTunes. Send us a notification that you've left that review. We'll get you a coupon code. That'll get you 50% off of our MCT oil and free shipping. Back to the podcast.
All right, so I wanted to talk a lot more about environmental toxins and impacts. I want to keep it short so that we can get into your kind of 7-tier health optimization system. What do you think is worse? And let's keep this kind of short. Microplastic, EMFs, EDCs, so endocrine disruptors like glyphosate. What do you think is worse? What is the thing that we should really be focused on first?
Listen, I'll tell you this, and Miguel can chime in. Like, dude, anybody that calls our clinic, I say, hey, look, however you came to us, I'm happy to discuss peptides, hormone therapies, photobiomodulation, cold plant. Spend years, months, pharmacies worth of stuff talking about this. It means nothing if you don't understand one of the greatest silent enemies that is affecting your health every single day, whether you like it or not, 24/7, 365 days a year, and that's endocrine disrupting chemicals. This is why, even if you're listening to it like, oh, I feel pretty good, I don't think I need this. This is why people should take their health under their care and prioritize it, because you don't know that there's an enemy out there that's affecting you every single day in more ways that you can imagine from every angle. So what are we talking about? Well, we're smearing it in our skin. You talk about which one's worse. It's not about which one's worse. It's about the constant accumulation and attack of all of these things combined every day. So it's not about which one's worse, because the problem is, for the listener, there's not 100% insulation from this. I'm sorry. You would need to leave this planet and find a different solar system at this point, because we're smearing it on our skin, right? In the form of deodorants, toothpaste, soaps, shampoos, lotions, makeup, sunblock. I mean, you name it, right? We're drinking it and eating it. I mean, Miguel and I were discussing this. I think science is now telling us that we're eating about a credit card's worth of plastic a month. Newsflash. Our cells weren't made to metabolize plastic, right? It's the reason why we have low testosterone. It's the reason why we have low sperm counts, right? So I don't know which one's worse, but we're also inhaling it, microparticulates in the air that we're breathing in, you and I right now as we speak. And some of this stuff can cross your blood-brain barrier. So this is every single day. It's in our clothing. It's in our sofas. It's in your showers. It's in your cars. It's in everything. And so, unfortunately, this becomes kind of scary, because most people are like, I don't know what to do. I mean, we're screwed. And it's like, no, that's not the right attitude. It's like, how do I work? How do I pay attention? How do I, focus my awareness in trying to diminish the exposure and work on detoxification strategies so I can release some of this load? So to answer your question, which one's worse? And I haven't even touched on EMFs, but which one's worse? I don't think I think that the sum accumulation of all these parts together is really what's concerning, because you can't separate them. You're going to be affected by one or the other or multiple at the same time every single day.
Anything to add, Miguel?
I would say, yeah, you have plastics, right? Forever chemicals. You got pesticides. You got heavy metals. You got GMOs. And then the stuff that we're not filtering our water, because our tap water is it's recycled. So you're drinking birth control, antidepressants, and painkillers in your water. I mean, we use a AquaTrue water filtration system, which gets rid of 83 different contaminants that you're drinking every day. Aside from lathering it on your skin and breathing them, you're also drinking this stuff every day. Mm-hmm. So when you ask which one could be worth, again, it comes into the genetics cycle, right? There might be certain genetic mutations that you have that might make you more susceptible or vulnerable to EMF.
Correct.
Versus EDCs. So it really depends on the individual on what issues they have, right? It's estimated that I'm one of them. Mild EMF sensitivity is about 35% of the population. Less than 2% has a severe, meaning they have to live outside of a city because they can't be around 5G antennas because they get headaches, migraines, and all these type of issues. So if you ask me, they're all just as bad. It's just genetically speaking, which one is going to affect you more than the other. But the cumulative effect of this stuff is poisoning us and it's killing us. Hence why we are the first, and very proud to say, first company in the United States to be offering microplastic semen test. Not only are we doing it based on blood and saliva, but semen, because in 2024, every male testicle sac was found to have microplastics. Wow. So if you come
every
to us
particular cell.
Yeah. So if you come to us for testosterone therapy, and we know that there's a high probability you got microplastics floating around in your junk, and you're concerned about having, infertility issues because of TRT, let's get a baseline on your sperm, and let's get a baseline if you have microplastics inside your testicle sac, because that's what we got to treat first.
Yeah.
And not to mention the blood one measures anything from 1 micron to 70 microns. I believe, so you get some context, a hair is about 1/100th of a micron, like in regards to size, right? And a red blood cell is anywhere from 4 to 8 microns. So we're looking for particulates. Anything from 10 below is getting into the blood-brain barrier. Everything from 11 to 30 is actually getting inside your lymphatic system. Anything from 30 to 70 is getting in between your testicle sac, serum, and basically your organs. So when we talk about quote-unquote hormone deficiency, we like to also use hormone resistance syndrome, which is if you have too many of these microplastics, they're attaching like a key in a key lock, but it's not unlocking the genetic potential, what it's supposed to do. But these xenoestrogens are attaching to the receptor. So when the real hormone needs to attach, there is no place for it. And that's why we have men and women that have optimal levels. They look like they're passing with flying colors, yet they don't feel the effects of therapy.
Yeah. And I would only add, we actually are working with a supplement that we tested. It kind of works in like a prebiotic sort of way, where it's an enzyme that eats away at the plastic particulates in your bloodstream. So really amazing stuff. I think that we're making some advancements, and we're going to need it, because the amount of plastic that is being found, they're finding it in eggs now, fertility eggs. They're finding it in brain cells. I mean, this stuff is
everything, bro. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
The concept of introducing something into us that would eat the plastics is both amazing and terrifying. I'm gonna leave it there. All right.
100%. We did it, and we got the test, and at least my test came back with, astounding results. We're still experimenting with it.
Yeah.
But, I think it's really important for anybody listening on this call. Why should you consider your health? Because every day you're being poisoned by EDCs.
And a solution, just a quick solution. Number one, you should have an air purify system, HEPA carbon filter that's filtering out 0.1 microns. Because if you're not doing this, you're breathing it. Number two, you should have an air dehumidifier next to your AC, and make sure that your humidity is not going anything above 55%, because you're making an environment fertile for mold and mycotoxins, which are another set of issues that we can have.
This is A plus student stuff, A plus student stuff. This is A plus student stuff.
And then the water, right? People are, oh no, I filter my water. I got a 4-stage carbon filter, coconut block carbon filter. I'm like, great. Are you remineralizing the water? What do you mean? Yeah, you're taking out everything from the water, meaning you're taking out the toxins, but it doesn't have any minerals. And electrolytes do exactly what they say. They electrify our system. Without electrolytes, life is not possible. So people are electrolyte deficient because they're not properly implementing these things. That's what I mean about understanding the biohack, umbrella itself.
Miguel just reminded me to take my electrolytes.
There we go. So, all right, real quick, what are the 7 tiers? I don't want to get into like what they do or whatever. If you could just list them off, I think that'll give somebody the perspective, because we got to roll into our wrap up questions here.
You got it
pretty quickly.
First of all, the 7-tier system. And I love that it's 7 days it took to create the world, and God rested on 7 days. I realized that not too long ago. Oh, wow, we got a 7. Oh, that's perfect. 7 is a perfect number. I think it's more like 15 at this point, but we'll keep it at 7 and bundle within the 7 everything, right? But it's pretty simple. You come in through the door. We want you to be at a bare backbone minimum, a C student, right? Based on what's out there, a C student. Get the fundamentals in place. What are the fundamental things that you need, right? For us, it's 4 things that you absolutely need when you're starting. You don't buy a Ferrari, and I would consider you to think of yourself as a Ferrari and not think of what type of gas or oil it takes. And it doesn't just run on gas. It needs far more than just gas, right? So you don't just give hormones without properly supplementing that hormone program or protocol, because hormones need to metabolize nutrients in order for them to combust themselves. Then tier 2 is you come in for your follow-up, right? You get on therapy 6 to 8 weeks later, feeling great. You come in for your follow-up. Now you can shift into tier number 2, which is an upgrade to the fundamentals, right? Now we start getting a little bit more into finger prick testing, and the higher you go, the ladder, the more precise we become, right? And the more precise we become, that means more testing, that means more modalities, and it starts to become a little more complex because it's not just some pill that you're taking or an injection or a cream or a troche, but now our lifestyle changes that you have to make, right?
And also the timing of these things, right? There's a timing to like the supplements that you're taking and, you know, the modalities that you're going to be doing. There's a specific time of day, specific syntax and order that go along with it. And so we need to coach you on that, because you can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to take everything all at once. You know, that happens a lot. And it's like, no, the body doesn't work that way. The body works in cycles and pulses. And so we're trying to mimic what the body would normally do if we were living 2,000 years ago, right? In today's modern exposures, right?
And I would caveat that although that we have this 7-tier process, there's some patients that need to start with opposite, right? They got to start with 7 from the beginning. It's just that, of course, we are branded as a performance clinic. So we started as a hormone peptide clinic, but we've become a lot more than that, right? Now, people look for us for that. But if I tell you, hey, Chris, your issue based on all the symptoms you're telling me is you have too much EMF exposure. You're like, what? What the hell is EMF? I came for testosterone therapy, right?
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful in how we approach these things, depending on who we're talking to and their level of education, commitment, understanding, right? There's so many variables that you have to understand before you make an assessment or tell something to somebody. But if we follow the general rule, we have the fundamentals, then the upgrades to those fundamentals. Tier 3 is where we come in with the peptides, right? A lot of people, there's a big fuzz about peptides and there's a lot of research-based peptide companies out there, which I will tell you without a doubt, stay as far as you can from them, because I'll give you 3 things that you need to do. I can give you a lot more, but I'm just going to give you 3 simple things. Number 1, they have on every research peptide company, they have a clause that they have to put, and it's the shield to bypass the FDA, which it says these are not for human nor animal use. And
At any point whatsoever for any reason.
And it's only made for studying stuff on Petri dish. So if you have a side effect, do not try to call us because they're indemnified.
You were not supposed to take it. Yeah.
Number 2, they don't have a microbiologist or a biochemist, PhD level, in their facility testing for high performance liquid chromatography, which is what looks at the purity and contamination of what's being tested. And then the mass spectrometry looks is the identity tag to make sure that the molecular makeup of what you're actually looking at matches. And unless you're actually doing that and have a legitimate certificate of analysis, because a lot of these, but they gave me their certificate of analysis. You can't trace it back to the manufacturer. And if you do, it's some company in China that good luck, right? The last thing is, 2 more things. They don't have a customer care service because, again, this is not for human or animal use. So you can't call them to know how to mix, inject, or they have a P.O. box. Try to get in touch with them. You can't. So aside from all of that, when it comes to purity, we work with our FDA labs or 503A or B compounding pharmacies, which are held to the highest standard of purity for a peptide to do its action. So a peptide, all it's telling the body, think of a manager. The manager tells the instructors or the employees what to do, but the peptides don't have the tools. That's where carbon C60, nitric oxide, omegas, all these molecules come in to help the signaling aspect of that peptide, right? So the point is, you want to have a 98% purity or above. So 503A, B pharmacies or FDA have to be 98 or above, right? When you're talking about R&D peptides, they're anywhere from 62% to 95%. Anything below 95% is dangerous. And this is what I want to leave people with, because I needed to touch on this because there's a lot of people doing it. It's really reckless. So for example, You know how we have the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, all the way to Z, if I can still remember it? Well, for proteins, we have an alphabet of 20 amino acids. It's really 22, but the last two are special characters, like you don't use question marks on every freaking word you're using. So they're produced by certain cells for specific occasions. We'll leave it for the 20 that are mostly used. So the alphabet of protein are 20 amino acids. If you grab a peptide like ipamorelin, which is very known out there, or growth hormone secretagogue, it's 5 amino acids. All right, so grab 20 amino acids to the 5th power, or to the power of 5, which is 20 times 20 times 20, you get 3.2 million different sequences that peptide can signal the body. Now, when you talk a peptide like DSIP, which is 9, but let's just round it out to 10 amino acids, to the 20 amino acids to the 10th power, you're talking 10.2 trillion different sequences. So if you're going to inject something into your body that can have, we're talking peptides go from 2 amino acids all the way to 50. So you're talking about millions at the bare minimum of different ways you can sequence these things. And if you're going to be injecting something that's signaling your body, imagine if it signals for cancer, tumors, cardiovascular issues, blood clots. You don't know. And we've seen all sorts of side effects using these things. So that being said, the third here is peptides. We don't start with peptides from the beginning, because if you don't have the fundamentals in place, then when we give you the peptide, you're not going to really get a positive response, because you don't have the resources to perform the job that peptide is supposed to do. Right.
Yeah, and I would say step 3, which is peptides, right? It's, the person has to graduate to that degree. Like, a lot of people call us about peptides, and look, it would be beneficial for us to serve you peptides, but it just wouldn't be ethical to do so, because they're just not going to work, right? Like, if peptides don't have the substrates for them to actually perform the signaling that they're trying to get, then it's going to go nowhere. So it's like, hey, most people are not ready for peptides. They're not ready for the peptide conversation, because they need to put into their body the materials that the peptide is going to use. So, just to kind of recap real quick, because I know we're short on time, like tier 1 is what we consider the absolute bare bone minimum basics, specifically around the area of endocrine disrupting chemicals. Unfortunately, very unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of young people with a lot of really bad hormone deficiencies. If you don't manage your hormones, you will not feel well, period, end of story. So tier 1, if it's appropriate for you, because it might not be, hormone optimization and the key ingredients that hormones are going to need for combustion, right? So that's kind of like the born minimum basics. Tier 2 is a little more specialized into the nutrients that your body is going to need, not only for performance, but longevity. As Miguel said, the deeper we go, the more precise we get. Specifically, if you're anybody over 40, I would say tier 1 and tier 2 are essential, because by the time you're 40, you've lost 50% of a lot of really important molecules that are even more important than testosterone for most guys listening, right? So that's tier 2. Tier 3, once you've graduated, now we can get very specific about your goals, right? Because I would say peptides in a general sense are very goal specific. They have to be timed. They have to have certain conditions. You have to do certain things around them, or not do things around them. You have to schedule them. There's a little bit of a commitment there, right? Not only in time, energy, and disposition, but also budget, right? So that's tier 3. And then tier 4, now we get into what, for Miguel was a huge issue, which gut restoration. We don't heal your gut. I mean, everybody's got gut issues, right? Because we live in this world and we're eating food that is poisoning us. So gut restoration is super important. I mean, the gut-brain axis is crucial. As Miguel said, over 90% of your neurotransmitters are produced in the gut. You don't have your gut working right, nothing's going to work, right? So tier 4 is gut restoration. Tier 5 is now senolytics, where now, again, the deeper we go, the more precise. So now we're talking what they call kind of like with the age reversal or anti-aging, where we're now putting in compounds that are really specifically working on longevity, because our whole thing is, how do we marry performance and longevity? I want to perform well. I need to surf 20-foot waves, but I want to do that for a very long time. And if I just focus on performance, I'm going to sacrifice longevity. If I focus on longevity too much, driving down mTOR all the time, I'm not going to be able to surf 20-foot waves. I promise you that, right? So how do we marry the two? And so tier 5 is when we really get with the patient about, mTOR and NPK activation, timing, how to like balance that out, right? Then tier 6, now we get into like, okay, you want to go the gamut? You really want to talk about EMF, EDCs? Well, we got to get your house EMF tested. We want to do EDC testing, microplastic testing, all of this other stuff, right? To be able to teach you, hey, what are some of the products that you need to get rid of in your house? We get into the filtering of the water and all this stuff, right? And then tier 7, I would say is kind of like
before it go that tier 6, it's also / getting rid of EMF, EDCs is basically our detoxification tier. Like, for example, if you're not taking phosphatidylcholine and some binders yearly or fiber consistently to aggressively get out these heavy metals and detox, because most people don't know these forever chemicals, and a lot of these toxic chemicals are stored inside our fat. And some of the half-life of these compounds can be in your body for 30 plus years. So number 1 is cellular detox. And when you detox the cell, all of that is going somewhere and it has to go into your colon basically. And you need something to flush it out. So when we mean EMF, EDCs, all of that is literally detoxing the cell from the outside in, like from all the stimulants that we're having, right? So
yeah. And then tier 7, I think Miguel and I have to talk about tier 7 again. Because now we have, look, we got, once we get you there and you're like, you have your physical dream, you're present, your mind is sharp, you're killing it in business, you're doing all that. We like to also talk about consciousness, right? Like we like to talk about spiritual meaning, right? And get you beyond the veil and what's really important, what's the purpose. And, psychedelics in a very controlled environment, setting have been a very powerful way of showing someone the other side of things, right? So, it's not something that we actually like if you call us and you say, hey, I want psychedelic treatments, it'd be like, you called the wrong place. Right? So we usually don't do that. We do that with very specific patients that are ready to take that step because again, it's a very delicate space, right? And we want to make sure that we do this congruently, right? But I would say that for like physical purposes and medical purposes, when we're talking about tier 7, now we get into Neo 7, right? We're partners with Neo 7, which is a company that basically maps out 22,000 genes. And just like SNP, right? Which, they specifically compound a baseline supplement to address your genetic factors. There is a company that does the same at a much more profound level in the form of a 6 to 9 month peptide therapy that only Chris can take. So it's the Chris peptide rather than, a BPC or CJC. These are peptides that are specifically tailored to your genetic functionality to get your genes to do what they need to do. So, like the elevator pitch is this, Chris, if I could take you back to the state of health that you had at your peak, at your prime, and I can reverse that and get you to that place, get your cells to perform and code for what they were doing at that time, what would you give me? And so most people will say, I'll give you everything, especially in their older age. And so we now, luckily with technology, have the capacity to actually do that. Awesome. So I would say that that's our tier 7.
All right. So we've got the 7 tiers. We got to get into our wrap-up questions. All right. Let's start with you, Carlos. Do you have a target age that you want to live to?
I don't have a target age, man. I don't. And part of that is part of my spiritual self is, whenever God's ready to take me, he'll take me. I'm going to do my best with everything that he's given me to nourish this mind in this body in an act of service so I can be present in all the areas that matter to me and to him for my purpose. So I don't have an age, but I push for as long as I can.
And when you say as long as you can, is there a number? I know this is like, what is it? Certainly,
in a simple way, I think that the life expectancy is 78 years now. So I would like to live at least 20 years more than that in a healthy way. Like, I don't want someone wiping my butt.
Yeah,
right?
I like it. 98. 20 years
98.
over the 78.
Listen,
Excellent.
we'll leave this podcast. This will immortalize the goal, so we'll see.
Carlos, next question, and you may have answered this already. How long do you think humans can live?
You know, Chris, that's a super interesting question, right? Because when you look at it from a cell level, you know, and there's actual life examples of this in jellyfish. When you get cells and you give them what they need and you put them in the environment that they were supposed to be in, they can literally live forever. So how long can we live? Listen, I'm a very biblical guy. We used to live 600 years according to the word and more. So I believe that we can live way beyond our expectations. And I think that with science today, I think that we are on the cusp of a breakthrough where humans will be living much longer than we have been accustomed to in the last 2,000 years.
Yes, we can. All right. So what's your target age to live to?
So yeah, as Carlos said, I honestly don't have one. Whether I live to 80 or 180, it really doesn't matter to me as long as I am fully functional and that I'm disease free and that I can still do the things that I love to do no matter what age I'm at. So that whole thing of living forever is not what I'm targeting for. I just want to make sure I'm autonomous to the last day.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to put right in between 80 and 180 because those are the numbers that came out of your mouth.
Yes.
That's 130.
130.
All right, I like it. And then how long do you think humans can live?
With the longevity, escape velocity, and the things that are going on, it looks like we may be living 200 years or more. I don't know. What I mean is we don't know what we don't know. You know, the Moore's law said that microchips were doubling in power and speed every 2 years. That's obsolete. We're doubling everything in every 3 months. Right now, the IQ of ChatGPT, I think it's like 130. What happens when it's 2000? We can't even think that far.
No.
So we don't know what we don't know, but based on this quote unquote AI we're creating, it could be 200. Sky's the limit, you know? I will tell you though, playing the game of trying to live forever is not believing there is another plan.
Yeah.
That's the way I
would just say, you know, we're a big Ray Kurzweil fan. He says 125. Okay, I'll put my chips on that.
I like that number because that's for some reason, and I don't know where it came from or when I even figured it out. That's been my target, like as long as I can remember. All right, let's go, Miguel. What are 2 to 3 protocols, habits, mindsets? Let's call them shortcuts because everybody likes shortcuts to longevity and a long health span that you would share.
Get proper light every single day. Get light as soon as you wake up. Go outside grounded every single morning and make sure your room is pitch black when you go to bed. I'm going to give you the most simple ones.
I like that. Carlos.
First and foremost, I would say honest and authentic practice of gratitude. Like being grateful for what you do have, because we have so much that we take for granted, and that plays a part in how much stress we have. It's a cascading effect. So I would say take care of this first, right? And feed this, right? So gratitude would be number one for sure. I would say proper rest, right? God rested one day for a reason. And, you know, proper rest, like Miguel said, sleep, you know, the more and more that we search this, the more and more we understand how important sleep is. And in terms of longevity, which to me is quality of life, relationships. I would focus on nourishing my relationships. And, you know, when I mean relationships, what are you giving to the relationship? How are you showing up? What are you contributing? How much of yourself are you giving into the relationship? And so that it's a different concept for a relationship. So
all right.
Gratitude, sleep, and relationship.
I love it. How about 1 or 2 things that people get absolutely wrong regarding longevity and a long health span?
Protein. Oh my God. Please don't get me started on this subject.
Okay,
protein.
real quick on protein.
No, please, we're going to need part 2. I think, listen, I will tell you this. You're interested about protein, call us, because this is, in my opinion, I don't know if Miguel has a different opinion. In my opinion, based on thousands of patients that we've spoken to, this is the one, if I can narrow it down to one, this is the one thing that most of us agree on that is important, but it's the one thing that most people have horrifically wrong, from PhDs to bodybuilders to fitness experts to nutritionists and dietitians. They get this massively wrong. Right. And I'll give you a sneak peek.
Yes.
You don't need protein. You need to make it and manufacture it. That's a different thing.
Yeah, all protein is genetically foreign to the body. And what we're really chasing is nitrogen retention. Yeah. That's it. People don't realize that carbohydrates and fat and protein, the only difference that makes protein unique is it has nitrogen. And it depends on how much nitrogen retention you have. So food, protein specifically, does have an absorption rate from 48% down to 16%. And branched chain amino acids, a 1% absorption. And we use a concept called irreducible complexity. If I give you a gun without a trigger, can you shoot your target? A boat without a propeller, can you go fishing? A piano without keys, can you play me a song? If all parts of a system are not simultaneously present, your body cannot make protein. And you need 8 specific essential amino acids that histidine is considered as one essential one, but Dr. Minkoff proved otherwise, that it's really 8 amino acids. And if you get them in the proper form and content, your body will make protein.
Yeah, I will tell you this. This one concept has revolutionized more patient lives than probably anything that we've ever done. And I'll tell you this. If it doesn't make any sense that you have to eat your hair to grow more of it, or eat your nails to grow more nails, what makes you think that eating a chicken wig or a cow's ass is going to grow you more muscle? It just doesn't work that way. That's not physiology. That's just marketing. So this is the one concept most people get wrong.
I love it. I'd love to have you guys back just to talk about that. I think
we'll have a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, no, I right, because this is something that I'm leaning on a lot, and you just get such a variety of stories.
And let me show the viewers, we got the protein, baby.
Yeah. And by the way, Chris, you know, it's so funny that you just said that, because looping back to my experience of losing the weight and all this stuff, this was the one concept. When I talk, like, the people, the patient base that pulls on my strings, on the heartstrings the most, are 17, 18, 19-year-olds. Cause I was there, man. I was there when I was trying to, like, read through the books and gain more muscle and get in shape. And there were so many contradicting theories about consuming protein, not, when, how. And anytime that I see a teenager that asks me, hey man, what do you do? I say, get your amino acids. Forget about everything else. Get your amino acids.
Interesting. All right. Miguel, do you have anything that you think people get absolutely wrong other than protein?
Yeah, that you can sleep when you die. I used to use that concept a lot. That's the biggest baloney bullshit I've ever heard in my life.
I second that.
I have to tell you, like, as you're saying that, and I'm thinking about as you've described yourself in the past, I'm seeing a guy with a bottle of whiskey and a jar of Adderall going, I'm just going to sleep when I die. Yeah. And in that state, I think we all have this concept now. That's going to be sooner than you would like if you keep going down that path. And I'm not talking about the whiskey. I'm not talking about the Adderall. I'm talking about the lack of sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. How can people contact you guys?
medicalhealthinstitute.com. Instagram, we're Medical Health Institute. And where else are we? I don't even know where we are.
YouTube. Well, I would actually look, if you want to learn more, and we're really big on education, all these concepts we've touched with, the world's leading scientists. So YouTube, MHI Life.
Yeah. And we interview from guys, PhDs, professors, scientists, doctors. I mean, we try to find whoever's the best. Oh, yeah, by the way, our tier system, nitric oxide. Let's go find the world's greatest nitric oxide specialist, Nathan Bryant, right? Electrolytes, Robert Slaback. Bill Harris for omegas. Carbon C60 antioxidants. Let's go to Chris. In which we have a pending roundtable to do eventually. We do.
Very cool. And what are you guys excited in the near future about?
Oof. I would 100% say the world of genetics. Yeah. Miguel and I have been very invested for the last couple of years in understanding this very complex world. We're very grateful to have the resource that we have. And Dr. John Catanzaro, who's kind of like taking us under his wing to kind of teach us everything that we need to know. And when you begin to speak to patients and look at labs, right, and you understand genetics, it opens an entirely different world and perspective on how to treat patients and how to speak to them. I'll give you a quick example. Guy that we've treated for 3 years found a suppressing tumor in his brain that nobody had ever told him about. Took him from zombie to rock star. Just recently he had a growth in his kidney that was found through an MRI. And when you look at his labs, he looks like the 2.5 LeBron James. Mm. So it changes your perspective about what labs actually mean and how deep you need to navigate through the actual genetics. And when you get to genetics and you get this world of precision that is game changing in how we treat patient outcomes.
I will add to that. We're going to get to a point, and remember how I said we're practicing with the most imperfect medicine that we have? Main reason for that is because unless I have Chris 6.4 billion nucleotide letters and exactly how they're arranged and which ones work and which ones don't, meaning some people's books have words that are misspelled, like lake, bake, cake, right? And it changes the meaning of their genome, of how your genes are expressing themselves. Then you have people, unfortunately, like with Down syndrome per se, right? They're missing pages. And then you have people that are genetically gifted, right? That they just have very little minor errors within their genome, within their genetic code. So it's exciting that we're getting to a point. Remember that in 2003, it took $2.7 billion in 13 years to decode the genome. 7 years later, 2010, you had guys like Dave Asprey paying $100,000 to decode their genome. Today, you can pay less than $80 and have your entire genome sequence. So it's going to get to a point that you're going to go see a doctor, or maybe our AI doctor, right? You're going to plug in your data and it's going to tell you exactly what medications, what peptides, what hormones you respond properly to, because there's some people that are hyper or hyposensitive, right? So we're going to precisely know more exactly what every individual will need. And until we don't have that fully mapped out, we're kind of playing a little guessing game, right? Throw a little bit. Oh, you have a little bit of ED. Let me give you a little Cialis daily. Let's see how you respond to that, right? If not, increase the dose. We're going to find precisely what's going on. And blood work is going to be a secondary thing that we do. We're always going to approach first the genes to see your manual, how you're constructed, and then use blood work to see the consequence of not treating those genes.
Yeah. So I would say, just to kind of piggyback over with it. So the mix of genetics with now the world of manned AI is the most exciting by far in the health space. I think, in general, but just specifically in the health space, where we can target and know about ourselves and how to change our physiology is going to be remarkable.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about genetic testing, and I interviewed a Dr. Sam Shea about this, and he makes the point that when you amateurize it, there is no more cost-effective test that you could do than genetics, because no matter what the cost is, it never changes, right? As long as you're not looking at epigenetics, it never changes. So that one test is valid as a data point or as something that you could reference for the rest of your kind of health journey.
100%. And let's just take the lowest hanging fruit of that, because look, I have to give a lot of credit to Gary Brecka. We've been known this for years before he ever showed up, but the way that he just went on the sound waves and just blasted this was just genius, because, let's talk about MTHFR for just 30 seconds. Like, this is something that if you do not address, you will pay the consequences of 30 years later in the form of disease and death. Period. It's like having a machine that's spinning in a rotor, 2% off axis. How long does it take to that machine to break down? And this is what's happening in our body. So by just understanding that you have MTHFR, let's say like in your son's age group, you find it out now you mitigate for this condition right now into the future without being in the blind, not addressing it, and then just paying the consequence of not addressing it, right? Because when people get sick, let's see the craziest thing. Oh, I never had this problem. That's typical. It's never a problem until you have a problem. And it's usually a 10-year, 20-year fight where your body just says, I'm done. But you could have mitigated the condition 20, 30 years earlier. That's what prevention mentality, prevention treatments are, based on.
I love it. All right. You can find them at medicalhealthinstitute.com on YouTube. It's MHI Life. That's also where you post your podcast.
Yes.
Check out them. If you haven't gotten the clear picture that they are extremely knowledgeable and are pushing the realm of performance optimization.
Yes.
Maybe you haven't been listening. Miguel, Carlos, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us on. We're grateful to be here.
Let's go,
Thank
baby.
you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow. Also, make sure not to be that guy, the guy sharing this podcast with people who are not interested in living beyond the norms. If you would like to learn more about the ESS60 molecule, the molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, a full 90% extension of life, visit myvitalc.com. That's myvitalc as in carbon.com.